Hello and welcome back to Read and Reread. I'm Angelia, and today I am coming to you with the previously mentioned video about what I call unhinged thrillers. So these are books that would fall into the mystery or thriller category, but that are, in my opinion, on the crazier end. And I've read a lot of books besides the ones I'm going to show today that I think fall in this category, but for whatever reason I do not choose to highlight them at this time. Either they just went completely off the rails, even farther than I can tolerate, major Scooby-Doo endings, or some other reason they just they didn't make the cut. But these are some books, and this is for a certain mood. Now, this is not your cozy Agatha Christie, someone in this room did it mood. And this is not your uplifting, hopeful, happy ending mood. This is more like I'm gonna just keep going, willing suspension of disbelief, crazy twists and turns kind of mystery mood. So these are not the finest pinnacles of literary excellence, but they are fun. And so, without further ado, I'm going to talk about a few of these books today. Alright, so the first one is the book I recently finished, and I've mentioned it a couple times, and I keep finding excuses to put this author into the videos. And this is Sleepwalk by Dan Chaon. I just finished it. I'm passing it to my husband because we both love this author. And as I talked about in my last video, and it'll be in my June roundup as well, this is his most recent novel, but really, I mean, pretty much all of his novels could fit into this video, so I'll probably put their names in the description box too, because he doesn't stay tidily into a category, and there's always unexpected elements in the plot and in the characters that get just a little bit on the fringes of your, plausibility realm. But in this particular book, we have Will there, who is kind of a hired hitman kind of person who travels around, does various dirty jobs for a nefarious organization under lots of different aliases, and tries to stay as low profile as possible and off of the technological grid. But he receives a phone call from a young woman claiming to be his daughter, and although he's very skeptical, he cannot contain his curiosity and then his kind of budding hope that this could be true. So he begins to do his own adventure to find out the truth. But on the other hand, he doesn't know that he wants to know the truth because he has lots of holes in his memory, and he doesn't like to look in those holes. He has some interesting thoughts on how memories are kind of like a bad feeling of something sneaking up on you, and his fantasy is to someday wake up on a desert island with complete amnesia, because when he starts to delve into those memories, inevitably bad things emerge. So I can't say much about the plot without giving something away, but it is basically a road trip into a slightly in the future, mildly apocalyptic scene of America, and his quest to find out whether Cammie, the girl on the phone, could actually be his daughter. So that is my first suggestion. I have some notes here because some of these books I don't have with me today. The next one I want to talk about is Dream Girl by Laura Lippman, and I'm a big Laura Lippman fan, and her mysteries are mostly not something I would put in this category. They're pretty, they kind of stay in a realm of, a detective or a person who's not officially a detective trying to solve a particular crime, but she does always have a lot of elements of, sometimes they're historical fiction, and sometimes they're contemporary, and sometimes they're kind of both. And she plays a lot with ideas also about memory and how those can shift. They're a dynamic thing. They're not like a captured snapshot of the past. Depending on who you ask and at what time in their life, the lens can shift. And so that comes up a lot in her books. But in this particular book, we have an author who is a famous author, and his most popular book, Dream Girl, people have been after him for years to reveal like who was the inspiration for the character. And he swears that she's entirely made up and it's not really a particular person. But a lot of people don't believe him. And the premise in this book, you will immediately think of the story Misery by Stephen King, because the author has suffered an accident in his ultra swanky high-tech apartment, and he's stuck in the bed with some injuries and having to spend a period of time being cared for by some caretakers. So whenever somebody, if you know it's a mystery story and somebody's bedridden and there's caretakers, there's red flags automatically. And so in this book, there's a lot of juicy things that Lippman explores about this character who is he's kind of a jerk, and he has a history of people having grievances with him, but his viewpoint on what really happened during all those things is very interesting. So it's like he's actually pretty funny, but he's a total douche at the same time. So he's sort of interesting to me. And then he starts to get phone calls from, again with the phone calls, he gets phone calls from someone claiming that she is Dream Girl. And of course he's like, well, she's fictional, she can't be. So again, can't give too much away, but a lot of things happen while he's basically in his bed with only being able to, use his brain and his hands basically. And yeah, it's for Laura Lippman, it's a pretty crazy ride. Okay, then the next one. Consider my notes here. The next story, again, is another one that has to do with books and authors, and it is Who is Mod Dixon by Alexandra Andrews. And this is the only book I've read by this author, but this one's really nutso. So in Who is Mod Dixon, there is a young woman, and did I jot down her name? I don't remember her name. But there is a young woman who wishes to be a well-known author, but she's sort of just laboring away as a no-name at this publishing company, and she has an ill-begotten affair with her boss that she thinks she might be able to parlay into getting something done with her manuscript, and this terribly backfires. So shortly thereafter, she gets a call from somebody who wishes to hire her to be the personal assistant of this very reclusive, famous author named Mod Dixon, who has written this one insane bombshell novel. Nobody knows who she really is, because that is a nom de plume. But Mod Dixon needs a personal assistant, and she is struggling to complete her second novel. So our young protagonist takes this job, starts to get to know the actual woman who poses as Maud, and after a period of time, part of Maud's book is set in Morocco, and she says, well, we need to go there. And so they plan to take this trip together to Morocco, where things all hit the fan. So this is a story about, let's see, how can I tell without giving too much away? It's about ambition, writing, authors, secret identities, and not underestimating people who seem mild-mannered. So anyway, it's a really crazy ride. I think it would make a really fun movie too. So that is Who is Mod Dixon. Then the next one is Gangster Land by Todd Goldberg. There's actually 2 books, and I think a third one is coming out. But Gangster Land and then Gangster Nation by Todd Goldberg. And these are kind of like, I don't know, I guess the spirit of it would be like something like The Sopranos, maybe. But we have a guy who is a mafia hitman who's really, really good at his job. He lives in Chicago. But this one situation goes way sideways, and a couple of FBI agents get shot. And rather than just simply dispose of him, he's such a valuable asset that they keep this guy, Sal Cupertine, who screwed up so badly, and they smuggle him out to Las Vegas, where he undergoes plastic surgery and gets a crash course in Judaism, and they set him up to pose as a rabbi at this temple and cemetery in Las Vegas. And he actually gets really into it, and he starts like really integrating into this community. And the cemetery is being used for money laundering and, body hiding. And so there's a parallel story about, there's the wife that he had to cut out on, and also a surviving FBI agent who is ruthlessly determined to find him. He doesn't believe he was, it's presented that he died, but he doesn't believe this. So in these two books that I've read, and I can't really remember the demarcation line, so my synopsis might be flowing across the books, but he's living this life as a rabbi, and this other guy is hunting him down and not satisfied that he's really gone. And so that's the setup. It's really crazy, but somehow it works. It's one of those ones where you describe it and you think, well, that sounds like the most ridiculous thing ever, but it actually works, and they're really good. So he's written those two. The second one ends on a super big cliffhanger. So waiting for book number 3. So that's Gangsterland and Gangster Nation by Todd Goldberg. Then the next one is Give Me Your Hand by Megan Abbott. And this is, I know she has written a lot of mysteries, and some of them are well reviewed, and I have not read another one. I know her most recent one, I think, was called The Turnout, about ballet, and it got really good reviews, but the subject matter just didn't really speak to me, so I haven't read it. But Give Me Your Hand was a pretty crazy book that we all read here at this house, and I think we all read it maybe during that pandemic 2020 time. Kind of the book made the rounds. But in this story, well, first of all, Megan Abbott was inspired to write this story by an actual true crime case that occurred in Texas. And there is an interesting story in Texas Monthly that explains the true crime case. And if I can find it, I will put it in the description box. But you wouldn't want to read it before, if you're going to read the novel, you wouldn't want to read the article first, because it kind of gives away something that's a surprise in the book. But this true crime case gave her a kernel of an idea that forms kind of the groundwork of this novel. It's not a fictionalized version of that story. There's just a piece of it that sort of spurs what happens between two characters. And so it's about these two young women who grew up and were very close friends in high school, and they're both very gifted and very competitive, and they're trying to win a scholarship for this science program. And then one of them shares a secret, and it fractures the friendship. And so then years later, one of the women is working at this prestigious lab under this very charismatic and strange person who's doing this lab research project. And still, there's still a competitive atmosphere, people who want to get, there's the grants and the people that want to get the assistantships. And anyway, girl number 2 ends up there and getting hired there as well. And so now they are in proximity once again, and they haven't really communicated since back when the big blow up happened. So far so good. But then the things that happen in this lab, you would have thought that a bunch of people working in a lab and researching stuff might be kind of boring, but there are crimes and weird people galore, and it requires probably the most suspension of disbelief of all the books in this list. But again, if you like dark, thrilling material, it's a really fun book to read. Not for the squeamish. All right, then we have a book. Actually, this might be, let me double check. I think this is the last book on the list. In this one, I do present with some words of caution. And I have this book here with me. This is Jo Nesbo's The Kingdom. This one is a standalone. So if you have read some of his other books with his long-running character, whose name no one can agree how to pronounce, it's Harry Hula or Hari Holy or something. I've seen Jo Nesbo himself call him Harry Hola, but I've heard other people say Hari Huli. So anyway, it's he lives in Norway. These are Norwegian, and anyway, this is a standalone, but it's good, but it's very, 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 very dark. So I give a trigger warning that if I personally, if I was picking a book to read today and I had not read it, this is not what I pick now, right now in the current times, because it's just, there's a lot of just violence itself, but also in families, sexual violence, nasty people. And the mystery is good. It will keep you guessing. And I wanted to include it on the list because I did enjoy it when I read it, even though I was like, oh my gosh, this is as dark as it can get, but I still have to see what happens. So if you're okay in that, that place in your mind right now, or you might want to save it for later. I would say, to give you a hint of the tone, if you have read, these would also qualify. I can grandfather them in, but I feel like everybody's familiar with these already. But if the kind of nature, if you've read The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and the very awful family in that story that they investigate, and all the sexual violence within the family, and then that kind of darkness in there, that's kind of what you also have in this book. So if you're not in the right place to read about that right now, skip this one. But if you're okay with some deep dark material, it is a good and surprising mystery. And I do love the Dragon Tattoo books. All right, I believe that is the end of the list. If I happen to read more books that fit into this category, as I am wont to do, I will add them on as time goes by. And if you've read any of these, let me know what you think. And if you have something you know about that you think I should put on my TBR list, let me know that too. So I hope you enjoyed this little dive into some nefarious material. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Gonna search for my mouse now and say goodbye.